The world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everybody, it's Kate Byrne, your host. Midlife. How does that make you feel when you hear that term, right? Kind of creepy, sad, scared. Well, you know what? It gets a bad rap because it's often framed just as that, a time of crisis, when in reality, it can be one of the most empowering, transformative, and freeing stages of life. That's if we choose to embrace it that way. And that's exactly thanks to my friend, our guest today, Shayna Kaufmann, who's the founder of Embrace the Middle and the author of the award-winning book, Embrace the Middle, chose to look at it. She's on a mission to change the conversation around midlife, shifting the narrative from decline to one of growth and strength and self-discovery. We talk about a lot. We talk about why midlife isn't a crisis at all. It's actually an invitation to redefine who you are, toss away all those things that don't fit anymore, and embrace all those that you have yet to meet. How to let go of the outdated expectations and create a new vision of success beyond the age of 40. And the gifts of aging, no, that's really a thing. They really do exist. And how to embrace change in our bodies and minds with confidence. It's going to happen. You might as well love yourself. What's the role of community and connection and how they're essential to thriving in this midlife section? And finally, what's one immediate action you can take if you're feeling stuck and uncertain about what's coming next? I know that one of the key pieces is just taking a beat and understanding you really are completely enough. But listen in and see what else you learn. Thanks for joining. Shayna Kaufmann, founder of Embrace the Middle and award-winning author of a book by the same title, Embrace the Middle. I'm so looking forward to our time together today. Thank you for joining Women Advancing.
Thank you, Kate. So excited to be talking to you.
This is a juicy one, my friends who are listening. And here's why. It's talking about a time in life, a stage in life, a being in life that we all will experience at one point, if we aren't already. Shayna addresses it with such grace. Before we go into that, though, I want to hear, what was your journey and what were some of the milestones that got you here?
Yeah, my journey actually was two fairly discrete parts, a chapter 1 and chapter 2, career-wise. So the first one, with very different influences in terms of what got me there. The first one, I worked as a forensic psychologist, going into courts, evaluating offenders, testifying in court, a very juicy sounding, for your word, dark slice of life that was very influenced by the societal values of, esteem and wealth and other things that went around, a very, very sexy sounding career. And it was very exciting, but also very dark. And I was immersed in a very sad slice of life and dark slice of life that had tremendous ripple effects. So chapter 2 actually started with the awareness that this other chapter was just not working for me anymore. And it was when I was approaching 50 that I realized that if I stayed in a career that I had outgrown, and that was not only not fulfilling me, but sucking the life force out of me, that it would be a lifelong regret. And I think decade birthdays do that, where I really pause and take inventory. And there was also a lot of personal things happening in that same period of time around 50. Menopause was in full play. Kids were getting ready to launch. Parents were declining. Body was changing. And I was trying to figure out how to navigate these inevitable changes with more grace. And the answer came to me in all forms, odd ways, during a meditation retreat when I had a hot flash. And the epiphany being that leaning into an experience that I would much rather not have, leaning into that and dropping all the negative stories around it and the instinctual tendency to try to get comfort from the discomfort of a hot flash. It was so much easier and liberating than all the energy it took to fight against it. So that moment was really the beginning of my personal intention of how I wanted to navigate not just hot flashes, but all these ensuing changes that were at my door, and thus became the term embrace, which captured that intention. And soon after, a company called Embrace the Middle, which I'm
And
in
it's,
now.
it's also, it's that notion of surrender, right? And really suffering can be optional or is optional usually,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, we
And
can't.
so, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say we can't choose all these things that are going to happen. To your point, we're gonna hit it. Our bodies will hit menopause if they haven't already. Our parents will decline and eventually pass if they haven't already. Hopefully, our kids will launch. So things are going to happen whether we like it or not. And though we don't have control over those things happening, we do have control over how we choose to respond to those things. And that's where embracing of a more gentle acceptance I found to be much more helpful.
So that is definitely a much better reframe of this period that gets such a bad rap. And by doing this, as you're saying, it's really much more about empowerment rather than.
Yeah.
So, are there some simple, I guess I should remove that word simple because nothing about a mind shift is always simple. But
Right.
what would be some of the mindset shifts that you would recommend that folks, kind of embrace at this stage?
I think to your point that midlife gets a bad rap, it does get a bad rap. I mean, it's associated with the word crisis or hot flashes is a very, or sayings like, aging sucks. Aging isn't for sissies. That was my dad used to say. There's these
Ah,
narratives that we come into this stage of life that almost sets up the experience for us before we're even there. So we're already at a disadvantage as we're coming into it because of the cultural pressure or narrative around it. And then when we get there, our thoughts so impact our behavior and our experience. It becomes, okay, we have to undo all of that. So I think a mindset shift is one, not buying into that aging is all bad,
yeah.
that it's necessarily a time of decline. It's a time of profound change. But I think inherent in all the changes that are going to happen is also this beautiful opportunity to have this version 2.0 of who we
Right.
are, because we've been on this treadmill of parenting and building careers and serving others, and by the time we're kind of in midlife, those roles start to change and we have to catch up with who we've become. And we've often been so busy we have lost sight of who we have become, even though it's already happening, if that makes sense. So
No,
it's
totally.
really, it's like this wonderful opportunity to catch up with ourselves and really have that version 2.0 being who we have evolved into over these busy decades, and make that more in alignment.
And you started off with a really interesting point, and I know I certainly have experienced it, and I'm sure a lot of folks who are listening have too. You start going through the motions, and then all of a sudden, all your old tricks don't work anymore. And those
Yeah.
old tricks, right? They could be at work or how you navigate a difficult situation or how you frankly kind of ignore a difficult situation. How, oh my gosh, you could drink like this, you could eat whatever you wanted, and now your body is kind of turning on you.
Yeah.
So you've outgrown that phase. I think of it as like a little caterpillar, and you're in that little larva. It's like, okay, I'm getting bigger, bigger, bigger. And this suit doesn't fit anymore. I need something bigger, which
Yeah.
is actually a really exciting thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then when
Very
it,
excited. Yeah.
yeah. And so when we're kind of redefining those identities, I mean, that's so tricky, as you just said, when all these different parts of life are kind of in transition. When you kayak or when you river raft, you get caught in, I think they call it is it the dishwasher, the washing machine? It's a really rough rapid, and it just keeps you grounded. And I think that really can happen so often. Aside from breathing, are there other practices that you yourself rely on to kind of help ground?
Yeah. Yeah. Breathing. And what comes with breathing is a pause. And those pauses of self, not just momentary pauses, but even bigger pauses of self reflection, of taking inventory, listening to our bodies. Like you said, things don't work anymore. Our bodies are great teachers on that. If
Mm,
you, I was, so I was, I'm on a board right now and I don't feel all in. And it
Mm.
was bothering me that I'm there and I don't feel all in. And I had to pause and explore, why don't I feel all in? And what I came up with was that it's not in alignment with me right now.
Ah,
And my body was leading the way. And so I realized, once I paused to kind of really explore that and talk it through another friend on the board who has a similar experience, that I have to make a change and transition, out of this board into a board that is in alignment with me. And my body was telling me that when we leave these interactions that's our body telling us that it's not working for me anymore. So I think to your question about steps that we can take is pausing and taking inventory and surrounding ourselves with authentic connections with people who support this journey of transition. Because I've talked to women who they want to go gray, but their family's not okay with them going gray. And so her conflict is not what her hair looks like with the gray. It's the pushback she gets from people around her. And as we make these transitions, we need to align ourselves with people that support this exploratory transitional process.
well, and I think that's a really interesting and great point because so often, isn't it true? And we've probably all experienced it once if we've gone to a retreat, which oftentimes results in a shift or in, if nothing else, just kind of a moment of introspection. And you come back and you're maybe a little bit more pensive. You may not be allowed. And people feel like you've changed,
Yeah.
not the you. And then that means I can't be me, or I
Yeah.
can't count on you to do these things to tell me that I'm great. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
and you just have to be so down with that and
Yeah.
realize, as you've said, this is your journey, my journey.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you be you, boo.
Yeah, when we change, we disrupt a system, and disruption is not always a bad thing. But when we change, we're changing because that's what's true to us, and oftentimes that means realignment of relations and realignment of a system. When our kids left, my husband and I were very, very well aware. My role dramatically changed. His did not. My
Right.
role because as the mom and in our household at least, I was doing the brunt of that. So his
Yeah.
life changed in an emotional way. Mine
Right.
changed in a material way. I started to step into my power and have my work be at the forefront. And there was a system disruption there. And so there was a conversation over how are we going to realign rules in distribution. There's a system disruption when we set boundaries. So no one likes change, even when change is for the better. But I think it's on us to stay true to what serves us. And if someone else has a problem with it, that's their problem.
Exactly. That's something they need to work on. What do you see as success looking like beyond 40? Like,
I
how do
think
you let go of those outdated expectations?
Yeah, I think we shift for me when these roles and when these roles change, in the earlier decades, there's so much attachment to I'm a mom, I'm this, this is my what I do professionally. There's so many roles that become who we are. And I think as we age, those roles become less important, and what becomes more important is who we are, not what we do. So
Right.
success becomes more of an inside out experience. So to me, success is kind of dropping perfection and claiming self-acceptance. you know
Absolutely. And compassion and grace.
it's about not seeking approval as much. I wouldn't say at all, but replacing approval seeking with trusting myself as the
Mhm.
as the as the main person seeking approval from, or instead of status, being about authentic connections with others. So to me, it becomes much more about meaning and fulfillment and inside out than all those awards and labels and accolades, which disappear. Whereas the inner stuff is ageless. That's always with us.
Absolutely. And I want to, with that, that's kind of a nice lead in to talk about. So, what are some of the gifts of aging, right? And
Mhm.
with that, I kind of want to take a little peek at, building confidence, this body mind connection, and really, what are the biggest myths about aging that need to be
Yeah.
debunked? I know we both have daughters, and I mortify my daughters because I tell them everything, everything. Like,
do they
gross, mom.
mortify do they mortify you in turn by telling you everything?
No, yeah. Well, then I know they actually. I'm happy when they tell me everything. I'm in the know. But it's one of those things where like, gross, mom, don't tell me about the eyelashes falling out. Gross, mom, don't tell me. But these are all things no one told me, at least maybe everybody else got the memo. But so what did you see as some of the biggest myths?
So one of the biggest myths is that aging is all bad.
Yeah.
Back to that bad rap. There's so much cool, wonderful stuff that can only come with age. And as you know, I did this research study that had 619 women worldwide participate in this study, and I did a deep dive with 104 of these women. And a lot of what we honed in on were the gifts that accompany the challenges. So it's not just a time of darkness; it's a time of profound gifts that can only come with age, which I'll go to into a second.
Yeah.
But also that as these doors close as we get older, the doors of kids being at home, the doors of our parents being the ones that caretake us and we now caretake them, as doors close, there's space for new doors to open. And so I think, aging in midlife should be perceived as a beautiful time of opportunity, and that it's all decline is really shortchanging ourselves of the joy earned over time. So that's, another myth is that it's too late for something new. My life drastically changed at 50 when I pursued work that fed my heart and my head and heart, as opposed to something that mostly just fed my head. So it is not too late. It is a perfect time because all these natural transitions are carving the way for change. It's a gift. All these big things happen that are saying, okay, the time is now. So that was kind of the first part of your question. And then the second part is what the gifts are.
Yeah.
In my research, and this was kind of universal to all women, that we have these gifts that coexist with the challenges. I call them the ands of aging. Some of the top ones are not just the wisdom, which we know we have more wisdom and we know we have more self-awareness, although sometimes we might forget we have this wisdom and self-awareness, but it is embodied. It does live within us. We're more resilient. We're more comfortable in our skin. We don't give as many bleeps.
Yeah.
We don't people please as much. We're more confident in our being. And I think the problem is that these things happen so subtly and so much attention is put on the difficulties that we lose sight of these. So midlife is a big cluster of ands that coexist.
It's really funny. I'm just sitting there thinking about how it's so true. You catch yourself in situations that would have historically really ticked you off. And you find yourself at first getting a little triggered going, hey, and then you stop and say, I don't know, whatever. And people go, what? I'm like, it doesn't matter. What? Do your thing.
And so what I would say to a woman in that moment, that pause and take in that moment and honor your growth of not sweating the small stuff and take it in, because we certainly take in the challenges. So give that awareness of those gifts and our growth, which we've earned and worked hard for, and turn it up like you would a song on a radio that you love, and give yourself credit for it.
Oh, I like that. So one of the biggest challenges, and this one is a tricky one, and we've been dancing around it. How do we embrace the fabulous changes in our body?
Yeah, it's a doozy.
With confidence and just be okay with it. Of course, not just let everything go, but to that, because that's what, all of this stuff about how many times have everybody seen on, gosh, it's even cropping up now, even on LinkedIn feeds, about this one and done skin thing.
Yes, it's such
right. Oh, you don't need it all. Or to your point, do you go gray? Do you not go gray? Just different, gravity is actually buying the size that does fit, as opposed to, after I look at you, it'll fit.
Yeah.
So on that one.
Yeah, and I share this publicly, but one of the reasons I named my company and book Embrace the Middle was actually my declaration of embracing my literal middle, because I realized how much time and energy and life force I gave away worrying about that, and how cruel it was to myself and self-rejecting. And I made this declaration that I'm done with that. and being so unkind to myself. And the middle is this something that does just grow with age. And thankfully I made it to the middle. So I'm gonna take that with it. So speaking to the universality of the challenge
Yeah.
of that, I think one way to do this is to gently accept. And so when I say, I don't mean acceptance like, okay, I accept that I've got more wrinkles and I weigh 10 pounds more. It's more of hand on heart. I
Mhm.
accept this is happening and it's challenging, but I accept it. And there's a
Yes.
tone in that that really acknowledges the pain that goes with it, but also opens the doorway to moving forward. It's doing this and then tossing those size whatever jeans that you don't fit in and stepping into those bigger size jeans. It's also appreciating that youthful beauty is not the only form of beauty. I so often notice these older women and how beautiful we are, and appreciating that beauty comes in all forms, and appreciating what our bodies can still do as opposed to what they can't do, and looking at the parts of our bodies we really do love, the color of our eyes that doesn't change, or the shape of this or whatever.
Yep.
So there's honoring what still is, there's being present to what no longer is in a gentle way, and there's not buying into that narrative and obsession. Because honestly, when in my research, when I explored what the real pain points were of aging, physical appearance was lower to the bottom. it
Interesting.
it was, even though we're marketed to all these products that make us think that that's going to be our sense of happiness and peace, but the things that were way higher than that in terms of really the pain points is number one, our physical ability, our physical decline, not
Yep.
not the decline of our skin, but the decline of our knees and our hips, to
Right.
speak to me,
Mobility and flexibility and yeah.
and
Yeah.
what we can do, and needing to take medications and that sort of thing. That was number one. Number two was death and loss,
Mm.
which we face often for the first time, and increasingly during those decades. And then number three was the sandwich crunch of the multi-generational demands that are happening at the same time, where we're still nurturing and supporting kids, and many of us are now in caretaking roles of our elders. That weighs on us so much more heavily than any wrinkle. So
Yeah.
yes, we want to look and feel our best, and of course we do. And that's really not what our main struggles. That's not what
Yeah.
it's about. Yeah.
And the picture that kind of just struck me while you were just going through that list, but also the notion of being kind and embracing and hand to heart with
Yeah.
your body is this is your body's cycle. It's your
Yeah.
body's process. This
Yeah.
says trust yourself. This is a complete expression of trusting yourself, trusting your body, honestly,
Yes.
respecting it and honoring it. Because if you fight it, oh my
Yeah.
God, to your point, the agita you give yourself, and once you release, more often than not, you'll start sleeping better. What was
Yes.
that weird extra, whatever that was? And you're just more joyful.
And
It,
there's such
right?
freedom and acceptance. It's that uphill climb up the downhill elevator to try to fight nature. And when we quit fighting it and we lean in, there is just, we can breathe, we can drop that, and then we get to have all this extra energy moving forward. So it
Absolutely.
creates it creates space. It creates
Exactly.
space. And like you said, room for more joy.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really true. And all of that, of course, is, I think, probably somewhat associated, as you've said a couple of different times, with, the community and those with whom you sort of surround yourself. So relationships, either at work, inside the house, outside the house, friends. We've all had situations where we've outgrown friends, but what role does community play in making midlife, this thriving, exciting time versus this isolating experience?
Huge. It is a huge role, not only in the shared validation that we're not alone and all these huge things going on, but the support we get from other women. In my research, when I looked at the tools that help women navigate the difficulties, female friendships was number one, because men cannot their experience is different. I'm not saying they
Yes.
don't go through a change. They do go through a change, but it's on a physical level. The hormonal changes are not as extreme. They're
Yep.
not having a door that closes up saying that they no longer bear children.
Right.
It's different, where women are more likely taking a bigger caregiving role of the elders. So there's some shifts that not only, but that women can relate to oftentimes more
Right.
directly than men. And so aligning ourselves with, but we want to align in community, not to commiserate. And that was part of why I started my
That's actually a
business.
really great point.
Yeah, that was really because I realized that I knew other women were going through what I was going through, but when we got together and just bitched and complained about it, that was not helpful.
Mm-mm.
What was helpful was hearing each other, sharing that validation, and then how can we move forward? What's helping you move forward more gracefully, and not buy this product or do this, but what is something that's helping you kind of navigate? Maybe it's setting better boundaries. Maybe it's carving out time for self-care. This was actually the impetus for my company, is that I found that getting women together was great, but it had to be leaving feeling nurtured and heard and seen, and not just trying to be fit, but heard and seen and validated, and then moving together in community like that. And like you said, they're friendships we outgrow, and that's a painful part of aging. But I think it's a critical part of aging, because we start to realize time is precious, and we become more discerning with who we choose to spend that time with, and really deeply nurture those relationships that are mutually fulfilling, and lift us up and leave us feeling good and heard and seen, and not questioning or weird, you know.
Right. I've gone through a few as of late, especially too, with kind of just the world being crazy and such. But they're just sometimes I feel that there are some that are more draining, less reciprocal. I really sort of have to gear up, and it's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, how can people nurture both not only friendships, but also you know, romantic relationships? Say I'll take a shift too. And
Yeah. They do.
intimacy, right? The
Yeah,
big
they do. They do. They do.
is a
Yeah.
big thing. So
Yeah.
what do you have some suggestions about what we can do to keep some of those connections strong? I'm sure it starts with communication, but
It starts with communication. It starts with your presence.
mm,
We can't, if we're, so there's communication, but then there's being present in your communication. And anything we want to nurture, we have to dedicate time to. So if you're saying the relationship is really important, but you're not crafting out time
mm,
to give this relationship, and give it not drive-by attention, but real present attention, then you're just giving it lip service. So
yeah,
I think really giving our time, our full presence, and yeah, and seeing the other person, really
absolutely.
seeing the other person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in relationships, there's the relationships that frustrate me, and I've been victim of doing this to my husband often, or the relationships where the other person just wants to fix. Well,
Oh,
I bought this product and this does, or I do this and this has. And there's a part of that that's dismissive, because
yes.
it's not hearing the other person, who really just wants your present ear. And it's coming beginning back to you, to the speaker, not to who's sharing with you. So I think those relationships that are more fulfilling are the ones where, be with me in this. If I offer suggestions, great, but until then, just see me and hear me and be with me, and I'm going to do the same for you, because that's
Exactly.
that's what feeds the soul and feeds.
Yeah, that's exactly just it doesn't we don't need to have to talk everything out. And I may just need you to be a sounding board so I can get what's in here and frankly dig down deep and get what's in here
Exactly. Yeah.
without judgment. And it may not make sense. I don't need it to make sense.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, when someone can hear you in your lack of sense making, and be there and nod and love you, it's even better.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So, so true. Well, so
Yeah.
to you and your research, and I just, it's so fabulous. What's been the most surprising and personally meaningful lesson you've learned from both writing Embrace the Middle, but also going through all those interviews and all the research?
How similar, and I interviewed women from every continent was represented. So this is a very diverse sample of women
Right. Which
worldwide.
is fantastic.
it was kind of amazing how similar we are in terms of what we're dealing with. Huge similarities on the macro level and big differences on the micro level in terms of how these challenges and gifts impact us, how we deal with them, and where we go with it. So we're kind of all sort of handed the same plate, and then
Mhm.
how we choose to take it and eat it and deal with it, big variations on that, but more similarities than differences. That was huge. How many women, almost all women, resonate with the gifts that come with this season, but being less aware of it. And so we need to talk about these gifts because it's universal. And so collectively we need to share that for our daughters to look forward to and share that other stuff. So
Exactly.
that was big. The variation in menopause, wow. For some women, it was turned your life
Yep.
upside down. For some women, they didn't even know they were going through. So
Yeah.
huge variation in that. And for me, and how forthcoming women were in having these conversations. We want our stories told. I asked to interview twice because you're so fascinating, and I had to follow up on some things. Thank you for being go to my research in my book. And me personally, I think going through this process was how my life took a 360 when I turned 50, and how much more fulfilling my life is, and how I had to drop that role of forensic psychologist and everything associated with it. And when I did step into that liminal phase of not knowing what the heck was going to be next, but that it had to be heart aligned, coming through to your analogy, the chrysalis, that messy middle when you cocoon, not knowing kind of what's next in the messy phase, and then opening up to the butterflies, to my wings, how much more joyful life is. And to think if I kept going down that path that was comfortably uncomfortable, I would still be doing that and missing out on a whole new chapter that's feeding my soul. And that is so exciting and joyful to me.
I completely hear you. And I think the one thing that I'm always, that makes me smile is that when one is in themselves, grounded, anchored, etc., I'm good with me and you do your thing. I'm not threatened by you. I'm not jealous by you. I don't feel less than by you. I feel genuinely excited for you because we're able to kind of be connected, appreciate the individual aspect of it, but also, wow, it's almost, I guess it's kind of like a work of art. That's a really cool expression of that. I hadn't thought that. Maybe there's something there I could learn from you on that. And it's less competitive,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's more comprehensive. And I don't
Yeah.
know, it's fun. It's much more wonder and awe inspiring, I think.
Yes. And I think when you ask about mindset shift, I
Yes.
think I think curiosity and openness about what could unfold, replacing fear and dread, is a ticket.
Yeah.
That is a ticket. And you're right. There's enough to go around, and that I think that's partly why friendships at this age are so much more fulfilling, because that competition, that scarcity, mentality, all of that really starts to whittle away more as we become comfortable in our being. It doesn't matter what they're doing. The sign of success is internal. The validation is internal. So yes,
Yeah. So, what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now?
that you are enough exactly as you are. And this has been something that is so deep for me, and so personal. And so right now, I just wrote a blog when I turned 60 about embracing enoughness, because thank you. It is I think a universal thing that so many of us feel we're not smart enough, we're not competent enough, we haven't done enough, we haven't given enough, we're not thin enough, we're not rich enough, or you name it. There's a flavor of that I think is so fundamentally human. And when we know that intrinsically we are enough, boy, is that an exhale moment.
That's a great way of putting it. It's a
Yeah.
great. So,
Yeah.
Shayna, where do you see the greatest opportunity for women moving forward?
I think the opportunity of the freedom that can come from this phase of life, the freedom to use our voice, the freedom to claim our power, the freedom to step into our most authentic self while we still, hopefully have a lot of years ahead of us. So claiming it, using it, not making ourselves small,
Right.
and standing tall. And we need to now more than ever We need to, and there is power in our collective voices. So not getting small and not shying away from, not buying into the fact that, if we stand tall, it makes someone else look small. No, if we stand tall, they can stand tall alongside, and we can be tall together. Yeah.
Exactly. Completely goes to that. There's plenty of room, and arm in arm is the way to go for sure.
Yeah.
And younger generations are watching.
They are watching. And I think we
all
saw
genders and gender, affirmations. So I think it's really important to, so often we think, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm just little me, blah, blah, blah. No, wherever you are. And that goes all the way down to younger people too. There's always a younger one who's watching you.
Absolutely. And they're watching how,
Yeah. So Shayna, where can listeners connect with you and your work?
Ooh, I love connection. My website, I'm on LinkedIn, Shayna Kaufmann. I'm on Instagram. I have an Embrace the Middle Facebook page. I have a newsletter that I put out bi-monthly, or actually twice a month, not bi-monthly. One is a blog, and the other one really shares links to podcasts and articles and other things that all have midlife relevance. I'd love to connect there. Yeah. And my book's on Amazon.
The thing that impressed me most, and I shared this with you with the book, is it's so real. I feel as though I'm speaking with you and all the other voices of whom you interviewed. And it's such a great use of humor, relevance. Everyone will just remember. It's so relatable. It's so, you just say, yes. Oh, I've done that. Yes, that's so true. Oh, thank God I'm not the only one.
Thank you, Kate. And thank you for being a part of that book journey. You were not only interviewed twice, but you're also one of my early beta readers, because I respect your opinion so much. So thank you for being on the book journey with me.
Well, thank you. I think that's one of those moments, everybody, when you get to help someone with that. It's a fabulous experience. Believe me, the book was all mine. And it was frankly inspiration for me. So who knows could happen as a result. But
I'm open to it.
Okay, cool beans. Well, Shayna, thank you so much. So many pearls. That's all I have to say. And I'm going to come back and talk with the audience a little bit afterwards about some of the key takeaways I see. But so much to digest and ingest. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And thank you for not only inviting me, but being a woman who really wants to advance women. Your work is so important and helping us all get out there. So thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of us all.
All right. Till next time. Wow. What can I say? Did I not tell you that was going to be a juicy conversation? Shayna and I were just talking about how we could go on and on and on, because a lot of those points, they're multi-layer. So I think my 3 key KB takeaways are, one, this whole middle-age crisis, reframe it. It's not a crisis, it's a gift. There's so many positive things that come about it. It's unfamiliar, so of course it's going to feel a bit uncomfortable. But like so many things in life, right? Suffering is optional, and this is definitely one of them. Second, when you fight the shifts that are taking place in your body and the shifts that are taking place in your heart and your mind with those around you, how there are sometimes people that you just outgrow, embrace that. It is not doing so is literally going to cause more pain than the actual going through it in and of itself. And then finally, take a big exhale. You are so enough. You've always been enough, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So have fun with that. Look at, it's like spring cleaning. Get rid of all that doesn't suit you anymore and make room for all the good, fun stuff. And there's so much fun stuff, but you have to open your eyes and you have to open your heart and you have to breathe it all in. So thanks for joining, and I look forward to the next time we're together.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.